hashtags consciousness back when the space was still fresh. And, it was gaining its own legs. So I decided that I'd take a moment and back off and keep doing what I'm doing. I know that at times when Clubhouse pops off, some of these conversations can go on for hours. I do have a set hard stop here tonight for those who are looking to conserve their time. It's going to be an hour and a half, just in case you want to know that right now. And we're going to take a moment to let it breathe and to let everyone get an opportunity to join into the room. It's a good opportunity to take a stretch, to center yourself, to realize where you're at. We're going to check the live stream in a couple other spaces. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I got some tunes already lined up just for a nice little prelude. So let's do that. Let's get into the room. Let's get the moderation set up properly. And then we'll go ahead and get started with this evening's build. So here we go. Just one moment.
The galaxy. The galaxy. Got that heat.
All right, let's just take a breath, take a moment, center into the space. Make sure that we're broadcasting over on the other side of things. I definitely have the crew in here with me this evening, Secret Energy family. Everyone's feeling great, doing good. It's the weekend. We just came off of a very powerful Tribe Vibes on Friday. If this is the first time checking this out, I definitely will say you have a treat for yourself. What you've probably been looking for a long time is here. And if you want to check us out, we're at secretenergy.com. That is what I say is the world's first conscious social network. We've been up for 12 years now, implementing some very vast spiritual technologies, and we've done a lot in the space. So again, if you haven't heard from us, then now you know. Also, again, tonight it's a simulcast, so that means I'll be broadcasting here on Clubhouse and also YouTube. So if for any reason you can check us out on YouTube/Innerstanding, and you can get us there also. Also, there's about 600 videos on that page. 600 videos. That's 12 years of nonstop, uncut, esoteric knowledge and the blueprint to the entire metaphysical ecosystem. It's there. I'm actually in Costa Rica, even though I'm originally born in Detroit, raised in California. But because I'm in Costa Rica and most of my videos were uploaded from Costa Rica, I think that I've always been nerfed on the YouTube algorithm. So our channel is just now hitting 126,000 subscribers, but that's after 12 years. So we have a very strong organic audience that has been in it with us, many of them from the beginning. And we're constantly picking up more tribe members along the way as we come into resonance. Now, I should have done this earlier, but I am going to do a sound check just for one moment. I got my panel here with me. Honus, Tequila, Dominic, and my boy Sean is here. So that's good. I actually saw some trolls tried to load it at the last moment. I'm like, come on. And then the great thing is that I actually had an indication for trolls joining. So I was able to kind of remove them from the space before they even got started with the trollism. So that means that we're off to a great start. So what's up, Dominic? Can you hear me clearly over there?
Yeah, you're coming through clear. I see the Murphy Law as well.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. And how was the tunes on that side? Was everything clear?
Yeah, everything was clear. And when you're speaking, everything's coming through very clear.
Okay, that's what it is. That's what it is. So I will also take a moment and ask anyone that is just joining in the room this evening. This is going to be a treat. It's going to be something that you want to share. There will be a mirror of it on YouTube, so that means you can check it out as far as the archive. Just know that it will be recorded. And but I wanted to let you know that if you have somebody that you feel will be interested in the depths of metaphysics, go ahead and take a moment and send them a link. I actually paused for a moment myself and grab a little bit of water. Also, if you have your Palo Santo and your sage in the house, this is a good time. For those that don't know what it is, Palo Santo and sage are ancient trees that help us clear the space. So when we're going through something, when we're hearing things, it just moves the air and it cleanses the air. So that way some of the stagnant energy that sometimes moves around like barnacles on the bottom of a boat will move themselves out of the way and allow you to get the clarity that you seek. So again, I'm going to go ahead and ask if anyone on my panel right now wants to take a moment to introduce themselves before we get started. You know what it is. It's like a train running. It's about 5 minutes after the hour. So let's give it about 5 more minutes, get some introductions here, and then let me also set some permissions. So Wholeness, what's up, Tequila? I'm glad you got a chance to make it. She was really one of the reasons why I decided to jump on back in the Clubhouse. She sent me a message. Somebody was actually using my phone, so they kind of sent some messages out everywhere and said, hey, Seven Bomar's on Clubhouse. So she was asking me, hey, you on Clubhouse? And I was like, nah, that's actually somebody else. But I see y'all got some new features over here. And the panel is looking good. And, the functioning as well. Last time I jumped in here, the stuff was cutting off and things like that. So I was like, let's give it another try because I really like what they have going on here. And I like the opportunity and the ability to connect with people that would be just completely outside of your scope. I always call that like the highway of life, but your highway. And you know how you could be on the highway of life, you could be having your thumb out, trying to catch your next synchronistic journey and adventure. But if you're just at home or you're just in your own box, it doesn't happen. You just kind of keep looping. So Clubhouse is still an amazing space to connect in because you have beautiful beings all over the world that are already doing massive things and sometimes could use that extra upgrade, if you may, to get themselves into a deeper level of connection with what they're doing and then also themselves. And wow, what a time to have that kind of power, especially since so many things are happening around us. It actually encourages us to really jump out there and make it happen rather than going into the darkness of the night, if you may. So, let's see if we can get some introductions going on here, if you may. And, we'll see what's up with this next 4 minutes.
Wholeness family. It's Takula, you want to go?
No. You're fine. Wholeness. I'm so excited about this room. I'm actually clearing space right now, so I'll jump in a second. But
Awesome.
So much gratitude. I'm excited. So Wholeness.
Well, I'm super nervous. I haven't been on Clubhouse since we were last on Clubhouse 7. I think that was months ago. So
nice to meet you. Super nervous.
I'm going to just sit into the excitement. It's kind of nice to be back in a nervous space. I know when we were back here, me and Veronica would say that the nerves is just a spiritual excitement. So, stepping into that discomfort and being comfortable in that skin. So just grateful to be here, mastermind, work with the mind, the psyche, and just all about connecting and seeing what community is about.
Incredible. Sister Nitty, do you want to say anything over there? Our sister is always doing her great works across the earth, bringing new birth into this space. How you doing, sis?
Wholeness. Hey, Savon. Hey, everyone. It's so nice to be back in this space. And, I just happened to know to even come on today because of Jeanette. And I was like, oh, someone tagged me. And I'm like, huh. And it's just by random that I even checked them today. So thank you so much for having me, even during such interesting times that we're in. And thankfully not at a birth right now, but maybe later. But at least to be here with everyone. So thank you, Wholeness.
Awesome, sis. And I know our brother Sean hit me up earlier. He's actually at a festivity, but he wanted to make sure that he's at least here for that pass off of the baton. And so I'm going to go ahead and get right into this since we do have a runtime today. I wanted to also welcome my panel for holding space. That's what we do. Sometimes it can seem like maybe even one person's talking, but what it is all of us are collectively manifesting a projection. And sometimes if it needs to be broadcast, it's better to just broadcast it through one audio system. So tonight I'm that dedicated audio system. But this is definitely a co-creative build, as it says, the collective consciousness. But we wanted to bring in something really fresh to just the experience in general. In fact, I really wanted to create something very therapeutic here in Clubhouse, something that didn't incite the same toxins that you may experience inside of social media. And just for those that are new to the build today or listen to this in the future, we actually have a social media platform that has been developed over 12 years. It's actually an ecosystem because we realize that there's a lot more to people connecting and actually getting into relationships. And being able to govern your relationship in life and learn how to communicate is a big thing. And these words are often taunted by some of the most enigmatic speakers and teachers of this time. However, we also feel that the integration of such knowledge, the ability for you to actually utilize an awareness to really even make changes for you tonight, is all really at the hand at times of the one who is actually mentoring. And I was looking at even this word mentor, and it actually says a lot. But before I even go into explaining that, I wanted to just give, for the record of tonight's conversation, a brief background on who exactly I am and what gives me such authority to speak this way. Because some of the things that we're going to get into this evening, some may feel, especially if they've been researching or studying it for years, they may feel a little bit bruised about some of the things that I may say just directly, and like, hey, this is what I see going on. Are you seeing the same thing? And they may wonder, well, has it been only a year for this guy and he's been studying this, or, what's his background? And so my background is that I've actually been studying esoteric knowledge my whole life since I was a child. It was a prerequisite in the house. However, I had also the slingshot effect of anyone who is raised in a spiritual environment or a church or something like that. And, you just want to get out into the world and go wild, especially if you're catching a little bit of drift of the energy moving through. I'm also 42 years old. I turned 43 here on the 22nd of this month. Awesome. But I'm in a specific age range that has allowed me to see enough of the planetary existence. Now, I'm not sitting on a ripening old 70 years of hoary age. However, I've actually been able to discover that there is somewhat of a loop that is happening inside of our lives. There's these epochs that we're all going through in our consciousness, and it allows us to be able to time where we're at, like what space am I in infinity, and I'll get into that a little bit deeper. So in this process of my awakening, I will say that in that experience, I had a full-blown, what you would call a Kundalini awakening in the city. I had no clue what the word Kundalini was, but again, I'm coming from a spiritual background, so I knew I just had activated. And I had activated in such a strong way for 2 weeks, I was able to see things as they really were. And the reason why I mentioned that I had this Kundalini awakening in the city is because I feel like it's a totally different awakening if you're out in nature. Maybe you're out in the Himalayas. Maybe you're out in, one of these pure, pristine places, and you go into opening your third eye to see all the beauty of the existence and the shimmering, of all the energy that's here, versus you're being... you hear the blaring of the horns, you feel the energy of the Titan buildings like AT&T. You see a lot of different work going on the streets and on the ground as far as real craftsmanship. I'll say it that way, meaning you start noticing that certain buildings, certain objects, certain statues, certain places resonate certain types of energy. And you also see that there's literally like a framework, like somebody has built a grid inside of this system. This is that full-blown Kundalini awakening inside of a city, right? So you begin to realize, hey, something else is going on here. And also in that, I received as a guide, as like a compass, I received a code that allows you to not just unlock English, but unlock all languages. I was shown that the words had been something we were overlooking, and that we needed to really go back into the words and make sure we understand the actual definition of each word and the origin of each word, because the words are functioning like a program inside of our consciousness. We think in them now. We talk to others in them. We say we want to do things. We project into the future with them. So they're so important, and so much important that people had kind of forgot how important they were and did no longer paid attention to their value, for better or worse. So I received something that allowed me to understand the code within the language. And then in my process and experience, I pretty much just wanted to go beyond and keep going beyond. I had started seeing what beyond is. I was very entertained by that. I was completely turned off by the world, already reaching a certain level of success. Still feeling like there was no answers here, and I was ready to keep pursuing this journey. And I was asked by what I would say is my guide, my personal self, my higher self, had I done the best to make sure that this code that I received had been given to the beloved, which meant everyone. There was no one that was excluded from that list. And I said, well, not really. I guess I could do a little bit more. And so I wrote this book called The Code to the Matrix. And it took me about 30 days to write this book. It was highly illustrated. And then I immediately put the book on scribe.com, where you'll find it today, because I published it for free. And I was like, okay, here it is. Here's all the knowledge and the wisdom that I received from this real download, this light code of information that is applicable inside of the physical reality that I'm living in, a code to the language. Here it is. And I called the book The Code to the Matrix, off of a pun that the code to the Matrix was the main thing being searched for in the movie The Matrix. And needless to say, the book actually went viral. It was incredible. Within 2 to 3 days, I did leave my little email address in there, whatever. I think I was still using a Hotmail address or something. I put it in the back of the book, and the email just blew up with people saying not only was this edifying them, but it was also even taking them deeper into some of the experiences that they had, and that some of them had never really thought about looking at language this way. And it was immense to see just how much had been erected around them with this code. Meaning, with the awareness of this code, it was very, very powerful for them to begin to see the reality. Now, let me slow down for just a moment here. Okay, so somebody is saying on the other end, we do get a periodic breakup. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And as I said before, if there's a mirror of this on YouTube /Innerstanding, and there won't be a breakup there, because it's the same system transmitting, one to Clubhouse and the other one to YouTube. So I'm going to keep going with this. So in this process, though, since I had a vast, or I would say a wide array of spiritual knowledge when I was going through this experience of the Kundalini awakening, I had some dogmatic knowledge, just the Bible, church, Islam, the Quran, these kind of structures. I had also had the opportunity to read a few other spiritual books also, even in that time, that weren't in regular circulation. One of those books was the Esoteric, which is actually, I think it's about 66 other books that were supposed to be added to the Bible. And of course, the Apocrypha, which are the 12 other books. And I had even seen the Key to Solomon. I seen a lot of Eliphaz Levi works, the Doctrines and Rituals of Transcendental Magic. So I had read quite a few books already, and before I had the experience. And it was interesting because the experience itself, I can't say I could make heads or tails of the Kundalini awakening based on the occult experience I had so far. Meaning the church talked nothing about Kundalini because it was under another name inside the church. And also many of the ancient books, they didn't really refer to Kundalini either because it was also under another name. So let's say some of those other names are like in church, it was like the Shekinah, it was the Holy Ghost. In other works, it was Sophia, or the Oracle of Delphi, right? So these works were writing about this same kind of energy and the same kind of wisdom moving around like a spirit. But because the names were different, I never connected the two. So even when I went through the experience, I had no clue of what I was actually going through. In fact, I even thought that there were some other people who I had bumped into from time to time in life that may have more of an understanding of what I went through. And when I finally found them, they didn't. So I was kind of in this weird position because I actually knew what I had gone through as far as an experience, but I didn't know what I had went through as far as it actually being documented somewhere and someone knowing the truth about what had occurred. So what I did was just what any person that also has a very strong logical side. I always had a very strong logical side, also working with technology. So I emailed the Kundalini Society of New York. And in this process, I realized well, in this process of actually emailing the Kundalini Society of New York, because I just was like, let me email them, because I found out that what I was having was a Kundalini, or had was a Kundalini awakening. And because I had received this code, I was thinking like, man, maybe I'm here to deliver something to the world that's going to change the world. I mean, that's how I felt with the energy. That's how I felt with the wisdom. And so I emailed them, and they never emailed me back. And in this process of weeks going by, I had since liquidated my entire life. I decided to come to Costa Rica and kind of get away from everything and everyone for a moment so I can resort my consciousness. And in that process, could you believe I actually received an internal email by accident from the Kundalini Society of America? And when I say by accident, it was a forward that was going through the office of this email that I sent in. And what the person said was, hey, David, which I guess was the president then of the Kundalini Society, this guy, the way that he's describing his experience, he has it. And so I got this internal email, and needless to say, I didn't know what it was, but I felt at least reassured that, okay, I have something. And even though they're not contacting me back, I need to go further. So this going further for me wasn't contacting external people. I could literally see energies around people and what was kind of going on with them and being wrapped up in some type of web. So I started pouring through ancient knowledge. Like me and archive.org was best friends. From one keyword to the next keyword, I was finding out that there was this whole ancient atmosphere that had already been put together explaining not only this experience, but more. And because I was already armed with this cipher, this way to decode words, it was speaking to me and it was telling me all sorts of stuff. And this stuff was riveting. It was showing me how illusionary the world is, just how divisive things can really be here, and how many of us have been here for beyond what we could call time, that many of the beings here were almost trapped inside of a loop of pretending and had gotten lost inside of this. And I started wondering, what is this? And how can I explain what this is even to others? And because I had this also technological, very logical background, I started finding out that there was like this universal code within everything. Like it was in cars. It's like the reason why a car works is because it has the same components that the body has. If you understand what the voltage regulator is, from the central processing unit to the engine, being the heart, being the brain, that there was a correspondence, a blueprint that if you went by that blueprint, you would create something that actually functioned. And if you didn't, then it would come back void. It just wouldn't work. And I was always just floored by this idea of everybody coming into this awareness, because I was like, man, all the things that are happening crazy in the world, all the gaps that we have with this awareness of what God is supposed to be, all of this stuff can be fixed if this code is in the hand of humanity and they actually start realizing what the truth is. Now, that was 12 years ago. You can imagine I came into a world that wasn't really ready to wake up to a nightmare. I didn't really think that one through properly. I really thought that if you gave this knowledge to everyone, that all of a sudden that it would be just joy through the streets. And what I was met with was doubt, fear, judgment, and all of the things that have done quite a bit of work in this world. So I kept on my thing. I started on my thing. So I kept going. I kept reading all these books, and it was going deeper and deeper. And then at a certain point, my eyes were even open further. And I said, you know what we need to do? We need to put some of this in action. And we went into action. We created Secret Energy, which is a social media network, an ecosystem that allows beings from all over the world to come into the experience to connect with themselves. The term is Innerstand. Innerstand yourself. There was some understanding, folks. They seemed to not really get to it. We even had them overstanding. They even seemed to go a little bit too far with that. So this understanding was something where it was like, look, If my eyes close, yours don't. All the stuff that's going on here in the world, you're still experiencing personally. And because of that, to have the opportunity to actually change yourself once in an infinity, which is be all that you need, would be like a gift that you never could put a value on. And I have personally received this gift. And at any moment when you catch me, I'm constantly giving this gift. So tonight's heading, since we've gotten started to a nice foreground, and let me just check my internet here real quick, because I see like my connection is a little interesting. Okay, yes, I've jumped over to another connection. So give me a minute. It never does that. So give me just a quick second here. Let me just set my audio here. Dominic, also, just on a side note here, was all of that coming through clearly, or was there more breakups?
It was mostly clear. Like, I didn't feel like anything was taken away from the content.
Okay.
But there is some, from time to time, a little breakup.
Okay,
but
great.
It's clear.
So,
you're good.
Okay, great. So we fixed that also. I don't know why it jumped onto the internet across the street. But it's obvious then, and that's what I want to get into this evening as we speed through this collective build, is that there's something that's always going on around us that sometimes seeks to throw us off track and to keep us off point. It'd be like that 1 minute that somebody jumps in and the message is there for them. And then they jump in right into, and then they're off to that next room, Twerking Tuesday or whatever, and they missed the boat again. And I started seeing in the fabric of life that there was like this flux, that even when you were so close to succeeding, something sometimes goes on that just completely derails you from going down the street that day or picking up the box that day. And what I figured out that this was connected to was the debt that many of us are in and our families have put us in throughout history by dealing in systems such as the one that we're dealing with today, where someone will literally buy your debt. And what I mean by that is that, as you know, the United States and most Western countries or westernized countries, central bank countries, are deep in debt. And you even have groups of people and organizations that they buy that debt so that the people that have that debt will owe them. And because sometimes we don't even think of money as even being that serious, even though we use everything in life to function on it, we sometimes don't ask the question, why would somebody want your debt? What does it mean to be in debt? And would that affect your existence? Would you feel like you were forever paying somebody back? Would you feel like in life that you were kind of a slave? I thought about, even just simple stuff like, man, what's up with this work thing? Like, ever since I came into this joint, it's been like, yo, you need to get a 9 to 5. So already, like, most of my day is spent on building something for somebody else. Doesn't that seem kind of odd? But it wouldn't if you just kind of came into that. You came into a world where everybody works. It's like a lion being born in the zoo has no clue of what it's like to be in the wild. So what this is about tonight is it's about a journey that even for you yourself, instead of hanging on every single word and trying to think, is that true? Is that not true? Why don't you just sit back in your spaceship for a moment and ride out with us? Take it as science fiction first. Like, sometimes when you're watching something or you're listening to something and you're on every single word just trying to disprove it, you miss the entertainment at least. Sit back like it's science fiction. Listen to what I'm saying, because it's going to be sometimes a little bit foreign to how you may have been seeing things, which will be entertaining for you. But as we start going in on this journey, really peep game and see just how the realities are set up, because we have a lot of respect for ancient culture. We have respect for dogma, religions. This is things that have been taught to us. But for me, it was very interesting to find out even the word God traces back to the Germanic king Gud. also known as Gad. It's the reason why there's a G in the symbolism of Freemasonry, and that this G was a king, and that everybody worshiped the king or was told to or forced to worship the king, because you even remember in the Roman days that the Caesars had deified themselves. And some people never think about that. Like, they never think about what would it be like to be raised in an empire or a nation where the king is also God. Because even though we don't think that our society is set up like that now, it's still set up that exact way, except there's a whole different level of knowledge for those who are aware that the king is still God. They call that accepted, right? So that level of knowledge and that level of secrecy that exists within the reality. And then the regular people, which they got the esoteric knowledge, or exoteric. Mary had a little lamb. You know, this works for kids. And so for us now, what we have to realize is that we have to realize that every part of the construct that you're walking into has already been put together. As Shakespeare said, the whole world is a stage. There's been already somebody, just like they do in Hollywood, setting the scene, setting up the energy, and working with the vibrations and the tones to create the space that you're actually in that determines your life and your future, your destiny. Whether or not you have a Kundalini awakening, which is just awakening to true life and true energy and what's really around you, whether you have that or not is not just up to you at times. Because there's a force that's almost like an antithesis. I call it the double. This is also synonymous to the word even devil. It's a double. It means that just as a byproduct of how this reality is formed, every time something is created, an exact opposite, a countermeasure, a yang, if you may, is created. And so just as you could be gung-ho about making something happen in your life, there's also another energy that is exactly opposite to that same type of feeling. And where you have to be is you have to be in the center of yourself, which gives you the ability to actually choose your path rather than your emotions actually choosing the path for you. Because the energy that we're seeing moving around in the matrix is actually the motion or the emotion. If you love something, this is a certain kind of energy. That energy can fill up the space. If you hate something, that energy can fill up the space. If you fear something, the higher the magnitude of any of these types of energies, you can change the entire environment around you. And you've had your environment also changed around you with the utilization of these same energies. We've all lived through the last 16 months where what we've over here been talking about for 11 years is actually happening inside of the world. And we're going through it. Just to show you our resilience. Humanity is a resilient being. And now, instead of us just groveling about being slaves in debt, paying off something that we don't even owe in the first place, subscribing to a system of illusionary make-believe, we have the opportunity to actually light resplendent, to activate the energy within us that will allow us to overcome, in this case, gravity. The grave, the force that's pulling you constantly towards the center, but intends almost to recycle you. Let's clarify that. The human body is a torsion field. The beauty of a torsion field is it's capable of repulsing or pushing out and attracting or magnetizing. And it can do that at the same time. That's even what creates the paradox for us right away in the world. We're Biggie Smalls. We can do two opposite things at the same time. And if we don't become aware of that, then we constantly only live in one of those projections. It's like I'm in light or I'm in darkness. I'm the good one. I'm the bad one. I'm the black one. I'm the white one. And so Kundalini is a great power, but unbalanced is also a very destructive energy. And when we're talking about collective consciousness, see the word now that we use called consciousness, is supposed to actually denote a certain group of people now. Oh, they're conscious people. Like, I still have yet to get a real definition on what this word means to be conscious. So what collective consciousness means, which just means to be awake, to be walking around, it means something that we're all sharing in. So as the headline of this show, we're going to talk about how Kundalini is being utilized inside of collective consciousness. But we didn't actually understand the true makeup of Kundalini. And so if we didn't understand that, then we may have went too far and didn't really see how this was playing out inside of the entire reality. So I have to take you to a moment where the organizations of the world, intelligence agencies, we'll call them that, decided that they would begin to open up the world to this awareness, this intelligence. And I'm referring to back during the 70s and the 80s in this interim, where liquid crystals or LSD and other dragons, as I call them, DRGs, drugs, from opium to crack, marijuana, all types of energies, which predominantly are trees, were introduced into the world. But specifically, we're talking about LSD, which gives one the superficial ability to utilize the HUD inside of your head to project a GUI over the reality, meaning that you're able to see the framework that the reality is built in. You're able to see some of the Euclidean geometry that's constructing behind the scenes of the reality. Why? So the question is, why would these organizations be so interested in opening up the world now to an energy that for thousands of years they have been hiding inside of priestcrafts and covens? And the answer to that question is that there is now a clear objective to begin to harness and utilize the energetic field that has always been around the human body. And that first starts with the awareness of that field. So as I mentioned earlier, you have a torsion field or a magnetic field, electromagnetic field around your body. And now we're in the time where the exploration of that electromagnetic field is underway. Now, I've talked about how in history, we can always determine when the society is about to change because the actual money, which always generally plays the god of the society, the money changes. Like the predominant money in use changes. So it goes from gold to machines and industry, then to plastic, then to digits, and then to computers, and then to digits. And just like that, all of the energy on the planet, the stronger energies become either digitized. And so in this time now, there is a strong effort to allow human beings to begin to become aware of the spiritual energy that is around them and begin to utilize it. But it seems to be business as usual with this group where they want people to utilize that power and that awareness to continue to create their own prison. And tonight is the night that we get another opportunity to put brakes on that for anyone that you have an opportunity to talk to, and also even yourself if you find yourself in this kind of position. This just means somebody else using your energy or harnessing your energy or tapping into your consciousness, even the parts that you don't know you have, the parts that you're still yet to believe that you have. So right now, this real estate, if you may, inside of your mind, you need to take control of. Because if you have somebody else's program, somebody else's music, somebody else's song, somebody else's vision, somebody else's language inside of your projector, and you're spraying that out as a point-to-point system inside of a matrix or a reality, then you actually become a chief component in making sure that it stays solid. All of us here, which are like fragments of the sun, and when we all come together, we're one gigantic soul. We make up a point-to-point system or a web that actually creates the reality that we're in. But if our main frame of control is the news, the media outlets, finances, in all these things that can be made to go up and made to go down, then we constantly stay on this roller coaster. And on that roller coaster, we're not balanced and we're vulnerable. It's like it's just too much chaos around you. You don't even get really a chance to think, let alone about yourself. All these different things about ancient knowledge and secret mysteries, you feel like that you need to deal with what's happening right now when what's happening right now already happened before. It'd be easier to find out what people were using as the solution to what we're dealing with now so we can apply it. But you would have to know the code. You would have to know the keys to be able to find that. So when I started looking for this Kundalini, because the society also around me, the conscious community was saying, hey, you need to unlock this Kundalini. I can't say exactly that I knew what I was unlocking. All I knew is that it went under the symbol of a snake. And this becomes very interesting because I found that inside of this reality, there seemed to be a lot of animosity and a lot of fear around this symbol of a serpent. And as I began to look deeper inside of much of these energetic systems, I started realizing that there was a lot of serpentine nature to the entire reality, almost like nature was some type of serpent or dragon. And I struggled with this because inside of the general dogma of the entire reality, it would admit it and say that, yeah, there is some kind of serpent or something. But in the same stroke, it would also deny that it exists. Like that's like the weird part about it. You would see people say, oh yeah, they're the rainbow serpent, they would call it. But then you say, well, do you think, serpents really exist? They'd be like, no, not really. So they would kind of go back and forth between an ancient shaman and then David Icke. It was weird. And so I had to personally take a moment to really, really dive deep into the awareness of, was there really another intelligent life form living on the planet with us? Not necessarily an alien from outer space or Aldebaran, but just something on the planet that maybe we could not see and that was interacting with us. And I found out that, yes, as many have also found out, whether they know what they're looking at or not, whether they know what some of them may now be worshiping and serving it, whether they know it or not, that they found out that, yes, there is, let's say, a predecessor, a family member, a more primordial state that has only one strand of DNA. We have two strands of DNA. One strand of DNA, which is basically what we would call now a reptilian. And that not only had our ancestors wrote so proficiently about this, but even up to modern times, most of the occult systems were in some type of affiliation with these kind of energies. And even just to say it was a serpentine or a snake-like energy really wasn't enough, that there was an entire classification of these beings. This is what the word spirituality really is. It means the actual study of spirits or energy. And I can remember back in what they say, science class. Science class would say, everything is energy. It's all energy. But boy, it didn't seem like they really understood that the energy that we were talking about, though, was like, it was alive. It had a consciousness to it. So let's just look at a little bit of what our ancestors say about Kundalini and what it actually is. By also lensing through ourselves, like this is going to be what we call a hyperdimensional journey. So let's just first imagine that nothing that we're talking about exists outside of you. Every single character, if you may, energy, preference, resonance, vibration, tone, frequency, whatever term you want to give it, all exists inside of you. And so this great exploration that you're going on is actually exploration of seeing who you actually are. So all of life then, or what I just call the universe, the university, all of this process is just to get you to know who you really are, but you would be surprised. Because you're everything, this means that everything that's ever occurred, everything that's ever existed plays a perfect role in your existence and makeup and in your experience. It just shuffles all in. And when you don't know about it, it makes you, it's just like, it takes you off guard. You're like a wheel. It makes a gap in your wheel. It's like, well, there's something missing, like a missing link in your chain. In fact, even what I feel like is this knowledge is the missing link They be over there looking for Bigfoot. The missing link is that, hey, there is another intelligent life form that's also here with us, and they make up part of a realm that we also connect with and exist in too. And these beings, from our ancestors' standpoint, they always saw them as serpents of light, like energetic, coiling, spiraling, moving energies that were intelligent, moving throughout the framework. And they also saw other things and pointed to other things as cognates of them. One of them actually happened to be the sun. Now, also, just a little biology for you so you can connect the symbolism. We know that a snake, go study it for yourself, eventually becomes a bird. Scales eventually become feathers. This means that biology does have something to contribute to all of this. We'd be trying to throw everything under the rug all the time, even though the words that they use for the scientific breakdown of every single animal and every single insect, if you knew what those words mean in the ancient etymological terms, you would get an exact explanation of that specific being. So somebody knows. So very specifically, when they were looking at this Kundalini or this great world serpent, they also saw this as the sun. There's an internal sun and there's an external sun, but the external one, they called the external one the light bringer. And this was because, if you didn't notice, every single thing that we're seeing in the physical reality is actually a product of the sun. And if you get on certain energies, and maybe you take a few deep breaths and do some whole body breathing, maybe you hit some diamond tree or something, where your frames per second go from, I don't know, the normal human 24 frames per second all the way up to 1,000. And then you could start seeing what's going on between the open spaces of reality. You start noticing that, wow, everything is being sprayed from the sun. It's like there's a code. The sun is spraying its code through everything, and everything has got the code of the sun running through it. Especially this thing, if you're ever looking at someone that is running through people, and that thing that's running through people, we can call the soul. So the words are also like, oh, the words are exact. It's just unfortunate that people also see the sun, S-U-N, as the same as the sun, S-O-N, and they think that the sun is a male, and then they just start falling down the ladder from there, as far as they go into dualism, then they go into the male-female thing, and then they lose their original state. Which, as we are configured now spiritually, since we have a masculine and a feminine side, since we have a actual, what you would call flesh, and we have spirit. So you see constantly these two forces that are mended together. But when they're separated, then that's what ensues confusion. That's what the fall is. So they looked at the sun, the ancestors looked at the sun, and they said, okay, the sun is connected right into me. It's giving me the life. Like when they say, hey, don't go into the dying of the night, rage against the dying of the light. What they're referring to is that your soul is like a light. It's what's keeping your body warm. And when the soul moves from the body gets cold and lifeless. It moves, the actual body moves into another space. It becomes more like a stone, but it's still conscious. But the soul itself, it has a heat. It's generating. And so what we learned is that just like a male will feel early in the morning with a male body being more configured toward the divine masculine side, also still containing divine feminine, but the sun rises and the energy rises through the male's body and everything stands erect. So the ancestors gave these symbols like a raising of a cobra or a raising of a jed or what they call DJ. And in that energy, you were standing up and you were erect. And so it was easy for the ancestors to identify everything because they felt it inside of themselves, just as you would feel it today. So when we talk about raising the Kundalini, it doesn't always mean these full-blown X-Men-like experiences. It also means just the ability to raise the energy through the spine and then over the spine and then back down to create a complete circuit. And so it was interesting then because this was like the quest of life that everyone was on before they got sidetracked at Hotel 6. the process of exploring all of the houses or the mansions of your body, that you move like the sun. So they said that the sun, it has 3 phases. It comes up early in the morning, and that's a certain kind of energy. And as they've shown scientifically, that there's like 15 to 20 minute gap in the morning where the sun gives off most of its light to all the plants and all the things that are there to receive it. And then after that, the sun begins to move into another phase, and that phase then goes at its peak at 12 noon. And who can face the sun at 12 noon? See what I mean? That level of power, full vigor, full climax, full magnitude. And then there was the sunset process, where they said the sun then became dag. They called it dag on. This means that it was a fish, because they would notice that the sun would drop below the horizon and then go into the water and then would live in the underworld, which the ancestors said the ocean is the underworld and the ocean is also space. And each of these phases that the soul would go through, you would go through a whole experience. So we've come to learn that experience could be happening over 6,000 years. That experience could be happening over 6 minutes. It just all depends on what part of the cog you're on, what actual part of the consciousness you're on. And let me explain this, because your body is a map. Now, notice how you're present right now in this space, in this matrix, even with me. We're talking together. There's others on the line with us. This is because our primary focus right now is in this space. We've pointed like a laser, that is our consciousness, into this space called Earth. We believe it's going to be here tomorrow. We believe it's here now. And we're all confirming that in the point-to-point system. So the power, one of the powers that you will receive when you go into a certain stage of awareness is the ability to dematerialize this frequency, basically to remove yourself from this space and put yourself into another space. But as of now, all of our primary consciousnesses are focused into this space, and this is the matrix that we're building on and that we're creating. And what we're doing that with is we're doing that with our soul, or the sun's energy, which has a code. Basically, it has a program in itself that is alive. And this is a vibration or a frequency, also called the verse. It's a song. And this same song is found within our organs inside of our body, which is why they're termed that way. Like somebody can even play you like an instrument. Like there's organs in your body. The frequency of your organs are actually the individual planets that we're seeing in the sky, but they exist inside of us. And so imagine that, because I've said a lot there. Imagine that you're actually a universe, and you're sitting up on, I don't know, Peachtree with some headphones in your ear, listening to this broadcast, waiting on the bus. So this is just how adventurous your life is going to be. Meaning that all of our lives of what we can see so far are holding nothing compared to all of what we are going to go through and experience together in the total awareness of what is actually happening and what kind of powers we have in this reality. But what we need to focus on right now is that this same energy that I'm talking about that creates things, it's not just laying dormant and idle. That's actually some of the context around some of these fake spiritual systems that just came up in the last 100 years. They're talking about, oh yeah, Kundalini is dormant and idle. No, Kundalini is alive and well. People are using Kundalini, but they're oftentimes using it to just function in one center, generally the root chakra. And if a person is, let's say, a star here in the world, and they got a lot of people that like them and admire them, but they're actually leading them into more distortion, then they've actually inverted their Kundalini. They figured out ways to send their Kundalini into the lower regions of their body to actually pull others into that and to attract others into that. But Kundalini is alive and well. And that even though you don't think that you have it, there's still now stimuli coming from the reality to actually get you to think certain ways, to feel certain ways about other people. And in that, you fulfill your small part in building somebody else's future. And I can tell you that these specific beings, they don't even have humanity's best interest in mind. So while we're still over here conflicting with each other about what color we are in a prism, where there's 9 colors being presented, just go ahead and put on your skin suit. While the same people that told you that they were children of Ma'at, which is children's of Ma'at is also Kundalini, but children's of mathematics, meaning that they understand the tetractys. The tetractys came to the world finally in the end with Pythagoras, just showing that this triangle, the only thing that this triangle confirms is not everybody serves what's at the top, but that everybody came from the same source. So none of us are greater than the other. There's none of that. All you would get is a bunch of enemies. It's like what we have now. And it's because, as I mentioned before, when you rise the Kundalini through a certain part of your body, and then you start looking out through that lens or that eye of your body. Let me explain that. So we found out, sure enough, that the eye was the gateway to the soul. It's one of the only parts of the body that actually has a vesica in its geometry. The other part is a little X-rated. So we'll keep it G-rated tonight. But your eye is the opening of a womb. So now when you realize that that's even in the word realize, the real eyes. When you realize that, you actually see, wow, the whole word is just so, the whole essence of the word is so cryptic. So when you're looking at things, okay, so the eye itself is synonymous with the sun. Okay, we've seen that all in the symbolism. Oh, it's the eye, the all-seeing eye, because it's the sun. But we're talking about you. We're talking about that your eye is a sun. And you would know that because every time you open your eyes, you immediately begin to spray out the reality. You think that you're just receiving the reality and like, okay, well, I'm back at home again. No, you're creating home. You're creating everything that you see around you, just like everybody else with their eyes open. That's why when your eyes are closed, that doesn't exist. So there's this powerful part of what we're doing with our eyes. And this is also why there's so many things that want you to look at it. There's so many things that want you to pay attention to it. And this is because the eyes are a way for energy to be sent. Just as I said, well, the sun is sending out this energy. When you look at something, you're sending out your energy to that. You're giving it life. So now you see why these stars and actors be like, look at me. Oh, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. OnlyFans, look at me. Look at me. It's just like, look at me, because just in the core essence of who we are as human beings, we already know where the energy comes from. And we know that we have energy when we pay attention to each other and look at each other. So even when things happen in other countries and they're like these atrocities and nobody sees it, it goes almost like it's not even happening. So there's always this thing in the world, even God, the Germanic kings and all of these people want someone to look at them and pay attention to them, because that's what gives them energy. And if nobody pays attention to them, then they're forgotten. There are powerful beings that have been forgotten. Nobody knows their names, their vibrations, or their stories or anything anymore, right? So that same process is why you have to realize what's so powerful in this configuration, if you may, of what you have inside of your human body, mind, soul, etc. But you need to know what are these pieces. So we also see that the eye, again, is spraying out life. And so, as the ancients put it, the spine, if you notice that, if you want to see, well, what is it about these reptiles or serpents that is very similar within many of the things that you find in nature? And it's the spine. If you pull the spine off the human body with the head, there you have the last version of the serpent. Serpent 4.0, now mixed with mammalian genes. Let's rewind here, like, to understand that all of our ancestors were genetic engineers for real. They just did it organically. And to prove it to you, they made things like the cat, where the cat is part snake, you can see that in its eyes, and part lion or feline. Now, in the wild, if you may, the snake and the feline, or the mammal and the reptile, almost are like sworn enemies. But the power of our ancestors was that they were showing you, hey, we could take things that were highly conflictive, highly combustive, and put them together and create more life. And that's why our ancestors had these cats around them purring and making the environments that they had configured in a certain geometry richer. Because the actual prana of what these animals were creating would stay condensed inside of the geometric realities that our ancestors were creating as they dialed in space-time. So they were showing you, yeah, you're going to run into a world where you're going to have always these opposing forces. And where you're at, though, just like any magician, if you may, has to understand how to fuse these opposing forces together through alchemy. Find the element that actually allows them to connect and not repel, and then be able to utilize that combustion and that energy and actually be able to create more realities, to create more existence, to continue this infinite process of our dinonucleic string, which is a chain, our DNA, which is also our memories, to spread across a vast abyss that has no bottom or no top. Meaning this is everything, baby. So there's no bottom or no top to this. So all we have is just our memories. They call them in the Sumerian, the MEs. Just the awareness of what we've gone through so far and what we are all agreeing works. And now there are great works. There are things that we can do with trees and things that we can do with medicines that give us a glimpse into the potential of what we're able to create. But if we're not doing that responsibly because we're still haphazardly learning, we're like a neophyte crashing into adept knowledge. We're in a rebellious world. It's like, yo, I just want to go to 12th grade. You ever been a first grader just like, man, I can't wait till I get to become a senior? It's like you don't even know math, basic math yet, and you already trying to hit the last grade. All you're going to enter is difficult classes and difficult courses. And so in life right now, because we're moving so fast, we got stuff that's perpetuating that we go faster. This is the technology and the chips and the vibrations and the frequencies and the sun and everything's like go faster, go faster. And now you got to be able to manage this energy, and it's powerful. Everything depends on it now. So let's look at the terminology that the ancestors gave, which is still replete on your wall socket. You'll notice that if you flip it up and the lights turn on, it says on. That is O-N. They say on is the god of Heliopolis, meaning it's a reference to the sun. When we turn the lights on, they remain on. The light is now shining through the place. And then when we turn them off, this is when things become hidden. Even the word off. Most people cannot etymologically decode the word off because they're not aware sometimes that the F is a P is an H is the same thing. Off basically refers to oath. Oath refers to a serpent, also known as the ophonym. And off is also known as the moon. So literally on the wall socket, they already have decoded the sun and the moon. So do you see how subconsciously every time you flip off the light, that's also the offering that many of our ancestors that served the moon were giving. Some of our ancestors, they served the moon. Some of our ancestors, they served the sun. I serve myself as all of them. That's the advice that I would give everyone here today is pack all this stuff up back in the box, Pandora. And stop seeing all these forces as separate or you'll get bent up in this game. If you start becoming a sun worshiper, now you're going to be battling with moon energies. Then you become the moon worshiper, now you got beef with the sun. This is like the left hand and the right hand path of the magical Wicca or whatever they call it. You see what I mean? So avoiding this duality is actually the key component. That's what puts you in as the controller or the navigator of your ship. Other than that, your ship is constantly being navigated by, oh, I'm the good one, or let's go with the good ones, or, oh, I'm the bad one. Like I heard a guy say the other night, we're the good team and the good team is winning. I'm like, man, what do you think this is? Is it a video game? It's like these powers and these energies, like off is like the brake. So you definitely need to have brakes if you're going to be going on like the engine in a car. You see what I mean? And failing to have one or the other of these, like when they say, oh, it's so negative, stop being so negative. Like, I'm like, what negative? The negative is on the battery in the car. So if I don't have negative on the battery in the car, the whole thing doesn't work. So what happens, again, as I said before, with words, is words can actually begin to fuse things together in our minds that otherwise should have some type of arbitration component in between them for us to truly see what it is. And this is also why, again, between the mammal and the reptile, if there's no arbitration component, then you don't even see how that connects in you. You don't see how the spirit side of you is actually more closer and akin to that of a reptile versus the physical side of you is actually more in akin to what you would call a bovid or an auroch or a mammal. But them together, which our ancestors proved that they had the ability to do, putting them both together in the same body creates a universe, or united in, verse means like you're actually conflicting. So this word universe means united in conflict. Another paradox. How are we going to be together, but we're arguing? Look at any relationship generally. they down, we down together, but fighting and arguing, tearing down each other. How does it work? It works because that's how the whole thing works. And then when you become a master of how the thing works, so you stop getting played, then you start realizing, okay, I'm in this fragmented state of my soul, and I need to bring it all together. I need to get out of also some of the other byproducts of just the field itself. You know, it's nothing against the field. But when you're coming into Maya, okay, because this is, let's say now, the root word to the word ayahuasca is Aya. Aya means a snake in most ancient languages, okay? So ayahuasca would be like the drink of the serpent or the drink of the snake, right? And some people are like, oh my goodness, brother, no. Sister, yes. It just so happens that when you go and you open the third eye, and not only when you look at trees, but mostly vines, you realize if you're just there on your explorer that, that vine is a snake. And sure enough, as you go back to your biology, you start just realizing that, wait a minute, it seems like there's a sliding scale here on Earth about the process of how we came into this. And if we start off, let's say, with the insects, we probably would then move to the trees next. So much so that you even have insects that still look like parts of the trees. And then you would go from the trees then to the reptiles. So much to the fact that you still have reptiles that appear like trees, if you have a third eye to see. And then you will go from reptile to mammalian, right? Where you now get the opposable thumb. Now you're walking upright, and now your spine is not bent, and now your face is in the air. And that would be like if I was just a genetic engineer, right? And I had to that would make perfect sense to me. That would be normal to me. And people are still struggling with this because they're struggling with the conflicts. Because the conflicts come in also in the symbolism. As I said, the bird versus the snake is even the world that we live in right now, north versus south. If you notice that most countries, when there's division, they're divided between a north and a south, a bird and a snake. This is why U.S., they love to fly around with that big ass bird, even though most of the time they have no clue of what it's like to be noble. Versus in the South, they deep in the South. They'll show you the snake under the form of a serpent, which is basically the pentagram. They show you the dragon on their stars, or the pentagram on the stars. But then you also see that, wait a minute, does anybody even know in these countries what's going on, that they're all part of the same thing? Because the bird is transforming itself to the snake. And most people in ancient cultures were worshiping a bird snake as their deity, or the highest state that they can achieve, the Quetzalcoatl, if you may. Because if you go into Kemet, it's the same thing. To wear the crown of the Nasut bit, to wear the crown with the serpent and then the bird, meant that you had now become the governor of the lower and the upper Egypt of your own body. And that somehow you have bought these two warring kingdoms, which are still warring to this day. Folks don't understand the beef between upper and lower Egypt is real. And that's a perfect term, the beef. So the reality here is that there's a constant conflict with the upper part of the body and the lower part of the body. And what you've been sent to do as the arbitrator, or the solution, the absolver, is to actually put these two together again. Humpty Dumpty. And until then, as you know, with Kundalini power, as someone like Dynamo Jack, type it in YouTube if you haven't heard of him. Dynamo Jack, the Qigong master, he shows you that he can light things on fire with one hand and freeze things with the other. It's not a fictitious Dragon Ball Z. It's a real thing. But what did he say that it takes to be able to do that? He talked about meditation, where you're bringing all of the energy into the center of the dantian of your body. So metaphorically, metaphysically, what that means is until you can bring the warring kingdoms that are warring inside of your own consciousness together to serve you, to where your purpose, that you start becoming motivated by this stuff you see. It's like, oh shit, they giving everybody a jab, man. I definitely need to get my shit together. I'm not going to sleep tonight until I bang out this business plan. Oh man, here they go. They ain't elected this dude in the office. It's definitely a wrap. I'm not going to be coming off my fast for 2 weeks now. So when things that are going on in this so-called reality start to motivate you to make yourself better, now we're talking. Now you're able to actually utilize all this negative energy for power. And anyone who's able to use negative energy for power, boy, there's plenty of it. There's a huge storehouse of it. And so now, as I said before, the nature of this as we go forward, I had to bring you into that awareness now. So there's a predecessor that is like a large serpent, or dragon is how they were referring to it, a rainbow serpent. Now it come out that this was your skin. Because remember, whenever there's like this huge story, it's like you got to find that within yourself. Always challenge yourself to find that in yourself, or just discard it. Truth you will find inside of you, because you are the truth. So I had to search for this truth. I was like, so where is this large life form that is enveloping everything? And it was like, Seven, it's your skin. Look at the word. Derma in Latin. It's an anagram for dream. What it's about is it covers everything. That they call it the covering angel, the covering cherub, they call it. It literally puts a film over you and the real reality. So it creates this veil, literally, between you and the other reality. And unless you get beyond the veil, then you can't see the other reality. So how this works is people be judging each other on the skin. And when they can't go beyond the skin, they can never see who that person really is. I'm not even talking about this on a racial black and white thing. I'm also talking about even people you think you care about, but it's because you got this physical thing with them and you like them because they look good, right? You'll never know that person. If they die, you'll never see them again or talk to them again because you never got a chance to learn their soul. Also, likewise for us, if we never get a chance to be ourselves, know ourselves, then you never know anything about what you did here because you were fake. That wasn't really you. You don't need to know things that are not you and that are not real and that are illusionary. So you forget them. And this is why so many people come in and out of these matrices and have no clue. We've been here infinite. We're infinite beings. There's no beginning. So this deepness of this knowledge lets us understand that, okay, well, this dharma or this dream, it's covering everything, just like it's doing with the body. If you were walking around with no skin right now, right? Would we really be, I mean, could you imagine that if nobody had skin and we were all walking around and it's like I couldn't really say Shorty looked good. I couldn't really say anything really because we would all look the same. It would all be the same color. We'd all have the same thing. Maybe I could tell a fat one. But you see what I'm saying? So the skin is the covering or the covering cherub. And what it does also is that it gleams. If you ever seen a person on the astral plane, the skin that's around them is shining. That's the shining one. It's gleaming. Like it's like scales, like micro scales. And the sun is shimmering off of the being because the sun is the one encoding the soul off of the skin. And even the word, as he's talking about tan, the word tan is a reference to a serpent. The tan in Satan means a serpent. You see what I mean? So, and the tan means to begin to get darker based on the energy and the code of the sun. So now we realize also now this covering cherub, though, it can be a little bit deceptive. It can be a little bit illusionary, especially when we start playing makeup. So like our divine feminine, They throw on some makeup, and it's like, okay, well, let's play makeup. You don't really look like that, but we're going to believe that you look like this. Then we all start believing you look like this, and then you start believing you look like that. But that's not even how you look. And then we keep playing make-believe. So the thing about Maya that they talked about, which is, of course, the root to ayahuasca, was that she still was the kind of serpent or being, as illustrious as she is, to attract, because that's what she does. She's an attractor. So you have, remember I told you there's a repulsive energy and there's an attractive energy. So the goal is the attraction of this energy, and they encoded that within the books of Enoch as the decorations of the eye. And a lot of folks be thinking about just some woman there decorating her eye, and for sure she looks beautiful. I know some folks over there, oh, Cleopatra, oh, Elizabeth Taylor and them eyes. You know, they think about the eyes. And I'm talking about the decoration of this soul. You see what I mean? That because there's a soul inside of the being, but this eye and this decoration of the eye is just a direct reference. Give me one quick second here. I got something going on here in the studio. Just give me one quick second. Actually, you know what? Let's take a moment. Let's take a breath. Okay, let's take a breath, because I love the journey. I'm sure if you're still here, you love the journey. The journey in itself is taking us through this process of becoming more aware of who we are. We said that we were going to go today until 8:30. We have 15 more minutes in this. So I can go on infinitely. I don't have a limit. What I'm working to do here is make sure that you are plugged in to that same thing, plugged into yourself. And as I was mentioning earlier about the makeup of this reality is like, you could get attracted into this space, right? Into Earth, into the whole experience, and totally forget about yourself and totally forget who you are. To thousands and thousands of years later, if you're counting time, all of a sudden you just wake up and be like, who am I? Where am I? What happened? And I'm trying to explain to you that that is a direct product of the powers that exist here, that they're also calling the rainbow serpent, also known as Kundalini, which is the actual framework that we're in creation. Now, our ancestors also called it Ma'at. So Ma'at, Maya, and Aya, and Kundalini are all the same thing. And when you understand the teachings behind those words and that knowledge, then you will come into a greater level of awareness of who you actually are and how you come to exist inside of this space. And one day, when you decide to come out of make-believe and come into your true self and who you truly are, make-believe is just the parts of you that you like or supposedly like, the parts of the reality that you like. This is like a farmer that doesn't want to touch the manure, even though that the flowers and everything grow from the manure. You have to be familiar with all aspects of yourself. This is like the person who's constantly working on their face, but they've never worked on their intestines before. You have to constantly be on point with yourself. You can't let this dharma or this dream blot you out and put you into some type of state or some type of hypnosis to where you forget what you truly are underneath all of this. So that way, when they start talking about death, when they start talking about fear, when they start talking about the end of your life, when they start talking about it's over for you, you don't believe in none of that. Because if you accept that, as some have, they've accepted there's a such thing as death. They've accepted there's a such thing as that you should be afraid. We accept these things. And in mastery, in teaching, look at Bruce Lee, look at all these things. They were trying to teach you how not to be afraid, how not to have fear, how not to be weary of death. And that comes through this training. It comes through this training of your awareness of the energies that are around you and just how powerful they are. But once again, you have to also be aware of how to not allow these systems, these matrices that we're in, which is a whole nother conversation of how those get put together and why, but to steal your joy. Never let them steal your joy. Your happiness, your great feelings about yourself, that's all that's driving you now. You're a perpetual energy system. You don't even really need food. Everything you think you need is because you convinced yourself that you need it. That's why in every high teaching system, they start showing you how to play with that. They start showing you, actually, you don't even need to breathe. For real, like the highest state is that you have none of the dependencies of the organs, because the organs are the created system. They're the created being. And what you are is you're the creator. And that's what's shaking things up right now. That's what's got this incessant onslaught to our people, because we are creators. And there's a fear of someone or something that has the ability and the awareness of the power and the potential of that. See, they just want you to create. Make your babies, make your businesses, bring your ideas, but they don't want you to know that you're a creator. You see what I mean? And they're so close together. It's so close together. It's like, well, I thought one equals the other. But see, in a mind that still has that film and doesn't understand how it connects and how everything connects together, that hasn't dawned on them yet. To see these secrets, that's why they called it. This snake, that's Lucifer. They say, what did it say? Lucy in the sky with diamonds. That basically means Lucifer in the sky with tetrahedrons, meaning that when you look up at the firmament for a while, you'll start being able to see a dot-to-dot system in the stars that seem to actually connect to a lattice work of a tetrahedron-like framework. The matrix, the nest, the womb. Right? And then they tell you, okay, well, there's this light bearer, right? And we talked about that. Okay, that's the sun spraying out as if it's some type of creator. Then they say, then when the night sky comes in, that all of the shining stars are like that of a peacock, because the peacock's feathers have the eyes on the feathers. And each of those eyes are gateways to souls, because each human being that leaves and comes and goes still appears in the sky, because each human being corresponds to a star. But how bright are you shining? If you're only going to be here tops another 50 years, there's no reason in rushing it, and you might as well leave a streak across the sky and be a legend. Do something amazing and incredible. You're not going to be here forever. Our ancestors saw this as an intermediate phase to where we can work on afterlife. An intermediate phase where you can even work on whether or not you're going to be wealthy in afterlife or whether you're going to be poor. And how do you do that? Well, the only thing that is worth it in afterlife is truth. The only thing that remains is truth. So the more you put yourself into truth and you confirm that truth with this blueprint that I'm speaking of today, the universal knowledge of who we are, the geometrics within inside of our own body. If you're wondering where is all the knowledge, they put you in the knowledge. The ancestors put you in the body. And now all you have to do is what they say on the top of the temple, know fesetin, know yourself. And in there comes forth all things. Knowing everybody else, it's like they don't even know themselves. So what are you really learning? So this all gives us opportunity to, as they said, they got a great reset going on. Great. I'm going to go ahead and reset myself then. If that's the energy that's being dialed in. You see, right now we're going into this Halloween. What was that originally? It was the Days of the Dead, when our ancestors were coming to visit us, the dead. It's totally opposite to what we thought it was. We're inside of a prism, so we are trapped below the speed of light. So that way we spread out into 9, or some people say 7 colors. And in that prism, we're here developing in an incubation, in cubes, inside the cubes of the tetrahedrons, right? Refracting light. And in that process, there's a point where our field comes in direct coalescing with the other field. That means that this world comes closest to the next world of existence. And that's this period of time that we're living in right now, what they call Halloween, right? It's a whole month where the realms are closer together. And in that time, your ancestors who are immortals, they're not existing in things like time. They put time in as a lesson. They come through and they visit you, just like somebody would visit somebody in prison or prism. And then they bring you all the things that will probably help you remember what life used to be like. You know how when you try to visit your homeboy in prison or whatever, you try to bring him something that reminds him of his life and what life used to be like? That's called the altar. To change your personality. We put on the altar all the things that you love, all these foods and cakes and flowers, and here's a note from grandma and here's some pictures of your aunts and your uncles. Remember, you are an immortal being. Remember, you have an internal celestial family still loving you and still caring about you. You're one of the younger ones. You know, just this moment when this time is open, here's something to remind you of yourself. Here's something that you left with me. And because we are the greatest of friends, I'm going to always make sure you have it. You have to take on that mantle in your life now. Because everyone around you, you are the greatest of friends to them. So to give them the possibility and the potential to be absolved from what they feel like is their debt that is devaluing them. People feel devalued, debased. We talked about the debase. This is to remove the basement from your building. What happens if you're a skyscraper and you have no basement? You fall over. You have no history. It doesn't matter how powerful you are. If you don't remember your history, you don't have any foundation, so you fall over. Your values. What happens when you feel like that everything breaks down to you and fiat, which has no intrinsic value and is depreciating? The debt is becoming worth less and less. What happens then? What happens is exactly what we're experiencing in life now. We start turning on each other, beefing about the work. It's like there's enough to have 2 million 7 Bomars around the planet. It wouldn't be enough. I'm definitely not trying to overlap. I'm staying in my lane. There's a lot of work here in the field. We have to keep going with this. So you have it too. So we spent the time in conclusion in putting together everything that is necessary for you to expand into a greater stage of consciousness. Most importantly, your family, your tribe. We built all these technological wonders such as Enealogy and Wealthy Bot and all those things, but those are just the cherries on top. The core foundation and fundamentals of Secret Energy is that we are a live, organic family all around the world that you can tune into and connect with and create your journey of synchronicity and continue your journey of synchronicity with this co-creation. So I wanted to give the opportunity, since I did breathe on the mic for just a moment. It's been an hour and a half, believe it or not, to just open the space and allow anyone that is on the panel, if they have something to share into the space, to do so. This is the beginning, because still, even at this point, really going deeper into what Kundalini is and how that is affecting collective consciousness is something that we have now entered. Now we know, okay, well, all right, so it's all around me. It's the energy that's all around me. It's made up of the fabric, and the mere framework that I'm standing in is coalesced light. And it is alive. Everything around you is living. Right? Even that it may be a light stand next to you. I got a light stand sitting here. I got this concrete floor. All of this stuff is alive on a certain vibratory frequency, even that I can communicate with it. I can manipulate it and I can move it. But I cannot do that if I'm bound to my own regions of beliefs that are of a limited structure and a construct that actually does not suit the potential for me to be able to create infinitely on that kind of level. So this is the grand opening for you at this stage. If this is your first time getting the opportunity to just be here for yourself and to hear this, and maybe all of it didn't make sense, and that's why we have a tutelage. There's a process to this. It's 12 years for me, 42 years of studying spiritual awareness that has brought this level of knowledge. But the benefit of me being here and us being here for each other is that we're all books. And even though it could take a person years to write a book, it only could take you a moment to read it. And when you read it, it would be as if you had gained all of that time. That's what we're here to do for each other. We move quantum. Somebody can spend years in meditation. That's like 1,000 years. and then come and just drop you a few gems. And now you have those thousands years added to you in a regenerative level so that you can go forward. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and open it up, see what it is. If you do have a question, we're going to take a couple questions. You know, there's always some kind of trolling and something going on. So we got the troll alerts happen. If you see somebody get removed, hey, it happens. But let's go ahead and get into that. Wholeness.
Wholeness 7. Can you hear me okay, first and foremost?
Absolutely. Wholeness.
Okay. You know, this is so amazing. I'm so excited that you decided to do this and tonight. And I was just speaking with someone, I want to say a few days ago, about some things I was experiencing energetically. And I said, you know, it's interesting that this is harvest season. And I feel that there's a lot of energy being harvested at this time. And of course, the person I was building with, you know, thought that was kind of crazy. They did not understand what I meant by that. But to hear what you just described at this moment, you know, I'm just sitting here smiling. That's pretty much all I had to add. Wholeness.
Wholeness, sis. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. You know, I just would advise humanity to understand the difference between what's happening right now in the world versus where we were just at, is that a lot of the debts are being called in. And you see that also happening on the financial structure, meaning that the terms are being renegotiated. So rather than getting into an even deeper contract that has less maneuverability, this would be the best time to opt into your sovereignty. So again, just to make everyone aware and very clear that the money that we use every single day happens to be necromancy. It's dead presidents. And while even I have to use it from time to time, I still won't use it with lack of awareness of what exactly it is. And the awareness also that I need to move from that system. So again, if you got these dead presidents, right, and you know this is a composition of certain trees, which is the cutting of roots. You got a magnetic strip, you got a signature, which is two-dimensional imprint of a person, and then you have what they call galouche, which is basically the decorations that you see on the dollar, which are cymatics. Then what you have is a full-blown talisman and an ode to what a piece of paper and intentions can do. I'll say that again, an ode to what a piece of paper and intentions can do. It can move the stars. There's literally something about when we put intentions and focus it into a pen. That's why they said the pen is more powerful than the sword, my Lord. This means that this pen and your ability to write these words or these swords is also how you're capable of carving into the reality and creating things into the reality. But also make no mistake, there's also those that are already aware how to do that. While you may be just going through that first process of believing in such things, there's those that only utilize those kind of tools in their everyday life. And now what we have the opportunity to do is, as I said, the sun is symbolic of absolution. That's why people started worshiping a sun god, because they were in debt. And just to be very clear that there are other entities, because I'm not telling you that all the reptiles are good or bad. As I always say, to say all the reptiles are bad is just as silly as saying all the humans are good. It's an awareness that there's other energies that are moving around, and our ancestors actually, some of them began to make pacts, oaths, rituals, and ask for favors from other entities. And they began to put us as payment for those kind of benefits. Like, we are not even in awareness of how shrewd the world was when children were the currency. That's still going on. All forms of currency are still in use on some stage or another. The currency is the God. But there was a time where you would read from the king would say, I need 1,000 of your perfect sons and daughters, the firstborns, every 3 years. They still show you papers that were written like that, especially in many of the fiefdoms. So if you can imagine that, the parent had to get used to giving their child away as a form of payment. And that was in itself only a shadow of what was going on when the spiritual world, when there was less of a veil between our reality and the spiritual reality, and entities were asking as payment the actual souls or the generations of souls of the children that were coming in the future. And again, what absolution is the sun, if you may, as being a light would absolve or erase all of these debts for a time and a season, as it would say. And then it would all start coming back. And that's why it's like a memory. It starts becoming like you start becoming aware of certain things. You start moving a certain way. You start seeing certain things in your dream. And you're like, man, what is all of this? Was somebody in my family doing something? So this is, again, the awareness of what's going on is the power. Because once you're aware of certain things are happening, then you can move yourself out of the energy streams that keep triggering that kind of stuff. And that's why I said it's all time for us to begin to move on. If they want to call it Babylon or whatever you want to call it, it's time to move on. And where we're moving into is not the same thing again. We're going to be moving into a total vibratory frequency that is a completely balanced resonance that exists with all of us going forward at our best to actually create a bridge between these levels of consciousness. So that way, when somebody is starting off at the beginning, they're not challenged to know the trigonometry version of my at right away. They go right to that next step that is going to allow them to be able to gain the strength in the right kind of increments they need. And that's why it was called degrees. They take these topics and these words and these subjects from other ancient tribes. Degrees was basically how much heat can you handle. The heat or the energy was also akin to the knowledge. So this is an original reference to how much Kundalini can really go up your spine and how many eyes can you really open before maybe you get blown, meaning that you just are non-functional after that. So the degrees is to raise the energy up through the spine and to first degree, second degree, third degree. This is the initiatory process of you coming into awareness of certain things about yourself. That's why even again today, there's the master's degree, there's the PhD. There's degrees are measuring temperature and knowledge. So let us be aware that we always have to fortify ourselves. Fools rush in. Don't get blinded by the light. There are many who are sought after all the great power and just were consumed by it. They're no longer themselves. They say they lose themselves and they gain it all. So they think, even though they're not able to think anymore. It's like they're not able to control the actual process of the creations coming from their mind. And remember that all is the mind. I love the heart, but the matrix that you're living in right now is projected from the mind. And just like that, this is why you can't die. In a dream, you can't die. They kill you in a dream, you back tomorrow. So there's some power with the mind. The mind is in a sovereign trust. It doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to all of us. That's why we have a collective consciousness. So it can't be sold. So if a person is convinced to give away their mind or, heaven forbid, lose their mind, then you see the state that they actually are in. He's like, man, he lost his mind. What does that mean? That means to lose the only sovereign thing that you have that can actually become the control point of you getting back on the throne of yourself. But always remember, just as the created things, the body is a created thing. So it has urges. It's actually tied into stars that when they move a certain way, you're ready to go hit the club. They move another way, you ready to go knock somebody's head off. They move another way, you ready to go love somebody. And they try to at least get holidays around all that to complement those moments. But you also have to be as a master alchemist. If that's not the energy that you're ready to go in, if that's not the wave that you're going to take right then you know how to resist the urge. Because what we have is we have reason, a purpose. Reason, a purpose, the ability to be able to say to oneself and reflect back upon oneself. That's what created, as they say, the God. They created from a reflection of its own self. This is you in the bathroom talking to yourself. Girl, we need to change our lives. Who are you talking to? You're reflecting on yourself. So now we're learning again, how do we reflect on each other? Are we always like, oh man, that she don't got the right shoes, or he don't got that, or I don't think he's telling dry enough, and it's that? Because see, that's the confusion. That's when you have adversaries that have already raided your entire palace. Now your entire mind is only conflictive. It only thinks of dualistic things. So the state in the body is as an inactive creator. And even when you create something, it's partial and broken. So it is temporary. You fall in love and then they're gone again. Just like the same cycle that you keep going through over and over again. And that's what they call it. It's a cycle. It's a circle. Psycho, meaning crazy. If you keep going in circles over and over and over again, it could drive you crazy. So now you see a world of madness. Mental health is at its all-time high of being necessary to be healed at this stage. And you see the groundwork. You can't come and just prop up somebody with a bunch of psychological lies. It's going to be all right. You have to really give them the fortification. How do you make it all right? You got to come into balance. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it open one more time. Next time when we come into the space, what we'll do is for those that are here today, if you wanted to ask some questions, you have something to comment on about this, it would be good to see you again. We're going to come back to Clubhouse, or forward, as I always say, since time is moving forward. We're going to come forward to Clubhouse next week. If you want to tune in to, I guess you could push the greenhouse. You can push the greenhouse at the top of the chat. You can also follow anyone that's actually here on the stage as moderators and get a notification of when we jump in here again. There's always something to share with this family, especially as we go through this month of October. I know there's a lot that is going to come through. There's going to be a lot of energy moving this month. And this is about how we get the energy into the perfect configuration that is going to allow us to benefit from this experience. So I'm going to give this a moment. I'm going to open it back up, and then I'm going to hit a last little set for this evening. And then we're going to go ahead and take it into another level of hyperspace.
Hey, Seth. I got a message that there are a few people that have sent messages to you through your back channel. Are you familiar with that?
Probably not. Let's check that out.
Yeah, if you go on your page here, there's a little, you should see it on your phone. There's a little like paper airplane.
Okay.
And it should have a number there, which would indicate how many messages you have.
Okay, yeah, I see that right now.
Okay.
Actually, it doesn't. Okay, so there's nothing really in here. Oh, there's some requests in here, I see.
Oh, okay.
Let me see what that is. Okay, somebody's saying thanks. Also, I guess, I was hoping Clubhouse did this at some point, because sometimes when you open these mics up, man, 4 hours later, and you just don't be wanting to jump in and be like, okay, brother or sister, we got to go. And I think that is just maybe one of the drawbacks of Clubhouse. But if somebody did have like a question, you can actually send that to me now, and I will take a moment to ask those questions. And I'll start off with, there's just one question here now. And that question is, are you able to explain Kundalini from a scientific perspective? If possible, give thanks. And maybe that came in a bit earlier. It actually came in at 8:30. I will tell the one who sent that message, if you weren't available for the beginning of the conversation, you can actually jump on YouTube/Innerstanding, and it's actually running there, and you can start from the beginning, because what I did is I went through the biological and the scientific expressions of what we're calling Kundalini without losing the metaphysical essence, because the metaphysical essence is way more valuable. Like all of the science and then the biology, those are lenses that originally they're like the babies of the metaphysical aspect of looking at things. And when you learn how things are metaphysically, it puts you right at the control point, versus when you learn about them scientifically, then you have to still take them through more filters to refine them, even though you will find them there. I also take things through a technological filter at times, because we're in such a technological age. It's very interesting to see how many different technologies are plagiarized directly from the abilities that the spirit and the body in combination have. So take the opportunity, go ahead and look at the work. And then also for those that are looking for the full-blown tutelage, what we put together is an LMS. That's a learner management system. We call it the Innerversity. And this means that you have an opportunity to go through the entire process of actually learning the blueprint, and also hanging out with Tribe at least once a week for us to get together and really build on it. And there's also always something new coming through, but there's a treat there, and you can check that out on secretenergy.com. So without further ado, I think that, okay, so here we go. Questions rolling in. Does joy awaken Kundalini? How does one carefully use Kundalini during sex? Is there any books you recommend that go in depth on Kundalini? So answering those questions just step by step. Joy, again, the energy of Kundalini is always moving. It's really about where it's moving. And this is why when you see the alchemical charts, you see a serpent moving through the sapphire. Okay, that's their current, they even be looking a little creepy on the whole thing. But what they're explaining is that the sun or the energy moves through different houses of your body. So you can imagine this then as that you need to visit every single part, and that's what a year is. That's what the currents in the ocean are. You need to be able to visit every single part of the body in a whole year. This is why a sovereign generally moves through all parts of the land they own in the progression of a year. And so you still see some of those traditions still alive today. And sometimes those time spans are set specifically on the culture, such as a jubilee. So it's a time that by 40 years, you're supposed to have toured the entire land that you're in possession of. This is still how they're keeping the sovereign laws on the land. But let's say physically, what you're doing is you're moving through your body in seasons, and you're visiting those parts of your body, and you're supposed to, of course, bring joy to the land. So for sure, joy does awaken Kundalini. Now it says, how does one carefully use Kundalini during sex? So the interesting thing is, so imagine that every single eye of your body is closed, if you may, or partially closed when the energy is not focused specifically on that. Again, imagine like it's like a laser. So when you bring attention to one eye, then that eye opens and brings in that energy and that essence. Also, those eyes can be pried open or in some ways damaged and left open. This is what they call an open chakra. So it's like an eye that's open, and all the debris of the field is always getting in that eye, and then that eye starts to become out of focus. So since the root chakra is where many have taken some type of damage, or there's sometimes a tampering with the root chakra, when the Kundalini is then encouraged to flow through the root chakra, you can almost get stuck in just Kundalini and root chakra experiences. So I would definitely say check out the Grand Trine. That's GRANDTRINE. That's Master Morris, because he's the only one that I know of that is actually still carrying the knowledge of the activation of the Kundalini sexually and still doing that with integrity, versus I even think the Tantric Mongoose, you can already tell that he's kind of a little bit more jaded on the other side. And that's just a product of the energy, because when you start, if you don't have a great deal of maturity, remember a real Tantric master would never really even touch women. Like there was always because the energy and the force builds up so high, you can just rub your hand through the environment and bring things to a stimulation. So there was an extreme level of control, if you may, over the force in order to basically to coax the force, but to never allow it to actually eject. You see what I mean? So there was like this, it's like riding a wave. But because the society that we're living in right now, flirting with certain kind of energies like this, you would basically be walking around like with this sign on you that says to the energies that you can't see, drain this guy, use this guy, you see, because that kind of energy, it can be seen on you. So it's just one of those things where going through the proper process of understanding how to separate what you would call an orgasm from an ejaculation, that those matters are at hand. Or what happens is when a person begins to develop their chakra centers in the Kundalini field, but they still are not really learned in the realms of relationships, they will basically mark people. So this means that you would get into this intense relationship with someone and the sexual energy would be so strong, it would be very difficult for the person to even have their own life or exist without you, because it's like your energy is entwined with that other person's energy and they can't untwine themselves. So in itself, sex or six is one of the most powerful energies. It's actually why the sun is configured like a hexagram, because it's a generator or a dynamo. But also remember, the story here is, the last known text, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, or Adam and Eve in the garden. Eve gives birth to Cain. This is just symbolic to saying that when you're using these energies and you don't know anything about life, the main thing you don't want to do is produce life, because then when you do produce life, you may produce certain levels of distortions. And, but you'll have to take responsibilities for that. And that's, of course, the thorns and thistles that sometimes are reaped in our lives. And so it's just a word to the wise of what you're doing inside of the garden. Lastly, it says, is there any books you recommend that go in depth on Kundalini? I would check out, again, the Grand Trine, just as far as, Master Morris has some books called The Divine Feminine, The Divine Masculine. And again, I feel like at this stage that we're in right now today, this is going to be the only thing that I can really recommend and say this would still meld well with the reality that we're actually in now, because we're not 2,000 years ago drinking water out of drinking water out of animal skins and wearing sandals. So it's got to be future forward. So I trust that answers your question. There's also another question here. It says, is there any ancient stories on decentralized organization that we can learn from as a decentralized autonomous org, DAO, are becoming prominent? Love the question. Like, that's actually what I kind of dig about Clubhouses. Every now and then somebody will come in and it'll be like those questions that really let you know that there's an awareness of the potential of what this knowledge and wisdom has to produce. It doesn't just have a spiritual application. It's not just what we call spirituality and it's all religious. This is actually about a universal blueprint. So to answer your question, decentralized autonomous organizations would be like horizontal. Versus society is set up almost in a pyramidal structure. The ecosystem is what's doing that. As you notice, there's a chain of command even with the animals, right? And so what we're talking about is a horizontal approach, a way that we all kind of go in together rather than one person being the leader and then us all following them. And it seems for sure that we're actually on the cusp of that awareness, if not already into that awareness now, becoming a part of the field that we exist in. And that is really what sovereignty is. It's not also saying that you don't need anyone, because we understand the camaraderie. We understand the connection that we all share when we're connected with each other. We power each other. But it's also saying that I also am not necessarily depending on anyone. So that way there's no regrets. There's no expectations. So I believe this decentralized DAO, if you may, that we're talking about on a metaphysical level in history is not really history. It's actually the future. It's actually where we all begin to learn that kingdoms are supporting kingdoms, or in more of a direct speak that you see in nature, that everything supports it, the next thing. And at any point when something is not on point, then every single thing starts to suffer. So that makes it our responsibility then to go in on all of the creations and not exclude any of the creations for any criteria, whether it's skin color, ancestry, awareness, etc. That is still our challenge to build the bridge. Very clearly, they called it the bridge to the light. This is the #1 Masonic book, is called The Bridge to the Light, because they're plagiarizing the same thing that was taught in the ancient tradition, saying that, well, where humanity is actually not necessarily in the light, and what we need is a step-by-step system to bring them to the light, or the awareness of themselves and the power of their creative faculties, also known as G, or the generator. This is in itself a Cadman, or a male, female, or hermaphrodite, or a Hermes, or a Thoth, or a Atrahasis, or and a million other words that actually come to us now as what are the gods, which is basically a being that has connection with the masculine and feminine side, and have fused those energies together in order to regenerate. And when you're capable of regenerating, then thou shalt not die. You shall not taste death. Meaning that for everybody else, they're kind of like dying. And for you, you're regenerating and you're living throughout existence in total levels of consciousness, because you've realized how to cycle your energy properly, i.e. raise the Jed, right? So there's one final question here, and then we're going to get into our sound suite. How do I practice balance and Kundalini with myself and the music as a musical artist in the entertainment space as our notoriety continues to spread? Man, again, amazing. I love the questions, because remember that now you got to be on point, because when others start to hear your creations and hear your projections, they do send energy. They send light to you. And what you have to do is you have to be a master of redistributing that light back to them in a greater magnitude in which you received it from them. So what basically we are is we're amplifiers. We have this ability to amplify each other. That's why when somebody is telling you, yo, man, you on point, man, I love this. Yo, that's my, wow, these are amazing. When we do that, that amplifies, we can easily amplify each other, right? So when somebody's saying, wow, the music is incredible, I'm loving this, I'm into the vibe, I'm feeling the space, it's like, man, you vibing too. You the one creating the space. If you think I'd be up here singing if I was just the only one up here. And so it's like you always got to be on point with returning that energy, so that way that energy stays moving, because no energy, the serpent itself, water itself, nothing likes to be stagnant. When it's stagnant, it spoils, it rots. It becomes what they call klipot. It becomes basically ferment, or what we would call bacteria. Okay? So just to be very clear here, it's a certain way of consciousness, because you already know that somebody is sending energy to you, and that you have to always be on point with making sure that you don't get too inflated by this energy, and that you are, as the energy is coming in, it's moving through you, and you're dispersing it into things that are going to yet create more greatness for others. And then you're using this faculty that you're calling your music. And then that's how your connection remains. And what you'll find is, man, when the smoke clears, what remains will be the truth, meaning that you'll see people come and go. You'll see artists, teachers, speakers. You'll see them all come and go. You'll see them reach their climax, and then you'll see their pitfalls, but you'll still be there. And it'll because you've done the personal work to make sure you're maintaining your energy centers, no different than a person would have to go get an oil change at a certain point and have to change out the windshield wipers to see clearer at a certain point. The same mechanics that we see that exist in anything that has to consistently run, especially perpetually, then those are the things that the kind of maintenance that we would still need to do on our lives. So, yeah, that's what it is, tribe. So let's go ahead and hit it. One more last sweet. I wanted to say thank you so much to the panel, the pillars that are here. And again, for those that may say, well, shoot, I don't know if they were saying anything. They were speaking through me. This is a collective. We get the opportunity to share this space with each other. We love to touch and connect anytime that we can, to share this knowledge and wisdom, and to make sure that it does not go dry on the planetary system, that we make sure that in these times where we need it the most, that we're nourished, and that there's actually some real knowledge, some tangible wisdom versus all the conflict. You know, here we go with flat earth again. Here we go with this. And it's like, what do you gain from all of that? Are you getting tangible results? And that's what this is. If you want tangible results, because we're dealing with the mechanics that control the entire matrix, this is, now you found your tribe. Now you found the space to actually come in close connection with yourself. Yeah? So let's go ahead and hit it.
The galaxy, the galaxy, the galaxy. To your eyes, 100 billion points of light.
D-Mark got that.
I see worlds.
Though the blood of a king runs through your veins, it is pumped by the heart of an explorer.
We have here nitric acid, glycerine, and a special mixture of my own. Together, it's horrible, dangerous stuff blows you up. But mixed together in the right way, as only I know how, what do you think it makes?
I don't know, sir.
Our purpose, to create a star within a star.
Your awareness may be powerful enough to control your instincts. Your instinct will be to remove your hand from the box.
Time changes space. Look, this flat ground we're standing on could have been at the bottom of the sea a million years ago.
The galaxy.
And a million years from now, it could be the interior of a huge mountain. Well, then why can't we see it?
Finally, we get to, at a certain point, this 8th and 9th dimensional being.
The galaxy. The galaxy.
You all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering.
peace. There is no hunger. There is no violence. The environment is healed.
All right, tribe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Clubhouse, YouTube. We'll definitely be in the space again. Like, subscribe, do what you do to get the notifications. Check out Secret Energy. Check out Sovereignty Mentorship. It's definitely here for you. This is a new time. The Great Reset is about you taking control of your life, absolving all your debts, and walking into sovereignty, wholeness.
Wholeness.
Wholeness family.
Wholeness.
Wholeness family.
Wholeness and balanced vibration.
Your awareness may be powerful enough to control your instincts. Your instinct will be to remove your hand from the box. If you do so, you die.
Where is your tribe? My tribe? Another planet in another solar system. Even in your lies, some truths. That mythical community you're supposed to come from, Fort Wayne. What about it? A fort! Unconsciously you chose a name that was belligerent. Where were you nurtured?